first thing is to understand the process, because then perhaps some of the challenges that I face become more understandable. The process is very clear. We have very strong documented governance principles within the company. They're contained within the shareholders agreement, they are contained within contracts held by members of the organisation, and certainly they're contained with my contract as the chairman and chief executive. So ultimately, if you look at the process, this decision did not even need to go to the board. This decision could have been one that I took, having consulted with Eric and Jonathan, and that's laid down during the process. And I could have just said, these are the drivers. That would have then been ratified formally at the board meeting, may not have even been discussed at the board meeting, and that board meeting would have, of course, involved shareholders. But how silly would that have been? You know, at the end of the day, we function with a whole series of values, one of which is to be collaborative. And as the sort of sands shifted over the course of the season, it was very apparent that people had valid opinions, and it was very obvious that the place to voice those opinions was within the confines of a board meeting. But at the end of the day, what inevitable debate brings about is a range of issues that need to be addressed. And those issues subsequently have been addressed between Thursday and today. And in fact, Jensen and I signed the contract as last night. And Fernando and I signed the contract many, many weeks ago, much earlier than anyone could even imagine, but only as and when he was in a position to do so. So I think the thing is, these things get mixed as regards governance and process. If you actually look at the hurdles, I make no apologies for having the level of consideration that I gave ultimately to the decision. The reality was that we were faced with an end-of-season possibility, a remote possibility, that we could overtake Ferrari in the constructors. I didn't want to destabilise the last two races. Going into Brazil, we had fixed a very important aero test that took place on Saturday in Abu Dhabi, and I didn't want to destabilise the validity of that test by having one driver motivated and one driver demotivated. And then there was another factor that came into play, which on the Tuesday following the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix was a Formula One Commission meeting. On the agenda was two or three things that I think had very significant relevance to the decision-making process. One was whether we would or would not have to run three cars, and the other was relevant to the economic stability of some of the teams. And as is widely known now, there are certain teams, one of which is McLaren. There are three teams who have a contractual obligation to run three cars in the event that the grid world champion entry falls under 16 or 16 or less. So I was balancing what is the stability, what is the possibility of that happening, and that was the right environment to actually ask